All right, welcome everyone to the second Gulf Coast Sun panel. This time talking about the September local elections and what signs they bring to the future of Atlasian politics. So we have former Green Party Chair Tachenka.
Hello.
We have Delegate and Peace Party Chair Koopa.
What's that?
And we have DA Vice Chair and Councilman Ninja.
Hi.
And of course, myself. So, yeah, I tried to get other people, representatives from the major parties, to join in. That didn't end up happening. So, you know,
Yeah, might join in at some point, though. It's still a possibility.
yeah, I did invite Yankee, but they are not around right now for whatever reason. So,
Yeah.
I don't think that there's much background to talk about. Let's just jump into analysis of the results, and I'll ask all of you your thoughts on it. So I'm just gonna go state by state, exactly how our great game moderator Lumine is doing it. So starting off with North Dakota, Labor campaigned super hard there. It was pretty crazy, actually. I still have no idea why they went specifically for North Dakota that hard. Uh, but they got almost 70% of the vote. Uh, 43 out of 50 MPs and 17 out of 25 senators. Uh, since a lot of the labor campaigning was attacking the DA, or as Truman called it, the dishonest alliance, I'm going to ask Ninja his thoughts on specifically those attacks and the not not too great performance of DA in North Dakota with only 7% of the vote and two senators. So,
Well, honestly, I think if they were able to pull off that it was a massive waste of their resources to only campaign in North Dakota. They probably could have won more overall across the map if they hadn't only campaigned in North Dakota. Of course, I think that the dishonest alliance thing is a load of malarkey. You're to be honest, that he's insinuating that essentially that we're coming in and we're saying things that are silly and that you should vote for Labor because they are the ones who have been in charge. And I think that that's just saying to vote for more of the same. And I don't think that the people of Atlasia should have to vote for more of the same. I don't think that Labor's leadership has been all that good. There's a lot of issues which DA has been bringing up, like our infrastructure and our criminal justice reform and whatnot, that we've been the ones tackling lately, that Labor hasn't. And the idea that we're all of a sudden these new people coming in trying to steal votes by saying nice things with nothing to back them up is honestly a bit absurd, because we've definitely been backing up our words, and a lot of us have long and distinguished Atlasian careers. It's not like we're new to this. Of course, as vice chair of DA, I don't appreciate the dishonest alliance, and really, I don't think we're the dishonest ones here.
yeah, I would expand on that, but I think I've discussed this enough in my own campaigning in North Carolina, which we'll get to that later. As far as Fremont goes, of course, with the Greens falling apart, they did lose quite a bit of the vote. And if I recall, their best showing was in Idaho, which was the next one, just by coincidence, with 4% of the vote. Although they still did not get any seats, they came pretty close by my count because the Liberals, with about 2 times more votes, got 2 senators. So that tells me that the Greens almost got one. So, Tachenka, what are your thoughts on the fact that there is still a decent amount of Green support despite everything that happened in the past month with the party falling apart?
I think part of it might be people disaffected with Pericles and the Labor Party, people that like the message of the Greens, our environmentalism, leftism. I think we had a good thing going. Our party wasn't able to hold it all together, but the heart of the party, the message of the party, the spirit of the party resonated with voters, for sure.
All right, I think that's a good way to put it. Of course, in Idaho, like most of the other states in Fremont, Labor did get a commanding majority with 54% of the vote compared to DA's 16 and the Federalists' 15. Although one spot that was a surprise to me, because I believe that Labor was leading in the polls here, was Iowa, where the Federalists narrowly got the most votes, 39% to 38%. They received the governorship and have, again, the most MPs and senators, but only barely. And of course, Koopa, you're from Iowa, recently moved to the South. So I want to know what your thoughts are on your state voting against Labor by such a narrow margin.
Well, I mean, the Federalists beating the Labor Party by such a narrow margin is honestly something that I am not completely surprised by. Iowa is very, this happens a lot where these narrow victories happen because the counterbalance between the conservative rural farmers and the liberal urbanites, especially in like Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, I think that sort of counterbalance like naturally leads to these sort of election results. And so, I mean, yeah, I think that something like this was bound to happen, and unless if there is some sort of like special case, it's probably going to happen next election.
I think also that while a lot of Fremont lately has been very deeply rooted in the Labor Party, Iowa has always been more competitive and more diverse than the other states in Fremont. Just seems like it's always been that way, partly because of Koopa.
And the Peace Party only got 1% in Iowa, which I think if Koopa had remained there and had actively campaigned, that Peace could have seen some seats there. But
yeah, the reason why Peace didn't do like that much campaigning in the NPC elections like really comes down to the fact that most of our focus has been on the federal level, trying to work out stuff with labor. We're still currently working on that plan behind closed doors. And so I think, by next cycle, if we, come up with the way that labor and peace can work together in one world, I think I'm going to try to get more campaigning, NPC campaigning in on behalf of peace, and hopefully we will get more than like 1 or 2% in these elections.
all right. Now, in Iowa, because it was so close, no one holds the absolute balance of power, which means that the DA is the kingmaker party. So, to Ninja, just a question of, because you are the vice chair, so you do hold a bit of sway over these state parties. If you were to choose, which way do you want the MPs and senators to, which side do you want them to support? Do you want them to support the Federalists, or do you want them to support Labor?
I can't really give what I consider a definitive answer because I think that DA's goal is not necessarily to always side with one party or the other. When it comes to individual policy issues, I want our MPs and senators in Iowa to vote how they believe would be best for the people of Iowa, and I don't want them to really give into that sort of sectarianism where they have to vote with one block or they have to vote with the other block. I think that it's not really exactly a secret that there have been instances where the DA has cooperated with the Federalist Party more than the Labor Party for a few issues, in part on the local level. I think that the Federalists and DA both share a very strong sense of localism, and that we both believe that the local government is very important. And also in governing style, I think we have more in common with the Federalists than the Labor Party, and in the way that we run our parties, I think we have more in common. So if you held a gun to my head and asked me to choose a side to support for party leadership, I would probably choose the Federalist Party in this specific instance, mainly because we both share that strong ideal of localism and Main Street politics. That Federalists, obviously, that's their big line, is Main Street politics, and I think that they have good points with that. But as far as policy goes, I would not direct the MPs and senators to vote with either block because we're willing to work with any party, even those that we're critical of.
All right. That seems to be pretty in line with how I've seen things, but I wanted to see if you felt the same way. Moving on, the mayoral election in Los Angeles was really close, abnormally close. In the final round, it was Democratic Alliance versus Labor, 53 to 47. A very, very close race, especially when you consider that the Labor Party had 48% of first choice votes. So I know I'm gonna end up asking you a lot of questions, Ninja. Why do you think that the mayoral race was so close?
Well, I think in part because Democratic Alliance has a very strong local following. As I said, in the last question, we believe very strongly in the ideals of local politics and our local representatives working for the community rather than for the federal government. So it's not exactly surprising that we're stronger sometimes in these local elections than you'd expect. Well, I can't say I initially expected us to get that close. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Fremont recently passed the ranked choice system for the local elections, including starting in the Los Angeles mayoral election. And as I said, Democratic Alliance were willing to work with members of any party to accomplish policy goals for the citizens. And I think that a lot of people found that appealing, even if they aren't, first choice voters for our party, that they found it appealing for their second and third choice votes that we're at least willing to work with their preferred parties. So a lot of it came from our openness and people deciding to give their second and third choices to us on the ballot.
All right. Well, that wraps up Fremont, and on to the South, which we saw a slate of states that were, I would say, pretty good territory for the Federalists. In West Virginia, you saw, even though the Federalists got 46% of votes, they did get a majority in both chambers, as well as the governorship, of course. I don't know if there's, I don't think there's any real questions to be asked there, except with, perhaps with Koopa in terms of the fact that the Federalists did not receive a majority of the vote and received a majority of seats. Would you be in favor of attempting to shift some of these local elections more towards a ranked choice system like what they are doing in Fremont?
I mean, honestly, I think no matter what happens, I think us Southerners should definitely at least consider ranked choice voting for these local NPC elections. I mean, we already do so, like when we do our regional wide elections, and they've worked successfully. We've, without that much failure. And so I think generally, from at least in my personal opinion, I think the South and its local governments would benefit from ranked choice voting. It might be a slow process, but I do think that, like, at the end of the day, it's better for everyone involved. And ultimately, if my fellow Southerners support it, then absolutely I will, go for it. I will definitely at least try to work something out.
All right. Moving on to Mississippi, this one was quite an interesting one because the Federalists won quite handily. I don't think that was a surprise to anyone. But the second, third, and fourth place parties were pretty close to each other, with Labor at 18%, Democratic Alliance at 14%, and the Dixieland Patriots at 12%. So I think I'm gonna ask Ninja again. Again, I keep asking you a lot of questions. But do you have any sort of explanation as to how the DA almost fell to fourth place behind a party like the Dixieland Patriots?
Are we talking about Mississippi here?
Yes.
Well, I don't think we did as much campaigning in Mississippi as we did in some other states, although I can't recall the Dixieland Patriots Party really doing much in the way of campaigning. They probably do have, however, a rather strong following in the state of Mississippi, is what I have to assume is the reason why they overperformed so much for a regional party in these elections. And that's pretty much all I can say about Mississippi.
And I'm going to ask Chichenka this one. Why do you think that a party with very, I don't want to say far-right views, but very right-wing for Atlasia, why do you think that they managed to do so well?
Are you talking at a state level, right?
Yes, in Mississippi. They got 12% of the vote, almost in third place.
The completely, fully honest answer is that I don't exactly understand how NPC elections work. I was never a fan of them. I never liked that part of Atlasia. And I was pretty new to Atlasia when I came into the Green Party, and my party members tried to explain it to me somewhat, and they put a lot of effort into explaining it to me, but I don't think they did a very good job despite their efforts. So I can't really comment, to be honest with you, because I don't understand how the NPCs vote or why they vote on a specific level. So I'm going to have to say no comment.
All right. All right, moving on to Kansas. This one was much closer than I would expect, with the Democratic Alliance only narrowly winning the state over the Federalists. And you would think, similar to how South Carolina voted very heavily for DA last month, that Kansas would vote pretty similar because of the work of current Speaker of the Southern Chamber of Delegates and former President TMTH residing in that state, having a long history in that state. So, to Ninja, why do you think that things got so close in a state that, at least on the surface, should have been a slam dunk for the DA?
Well, I don't think that Kansas started with the same registration advantage for DA that it had in South Carolina. And South Carolina DA has a massive voter registration advantage compared to other states, especially, which kind of made it easier for you to lock down that state. Of course, your efforts are still very much appreciated. Not saying that you didn't. This state started with a lead in South Carolina. We didn't actually start with a lead in Kansas in the initial polling, because the truth is that we're not as big of a party as a lot of the other parties as far as voter registration goes. So we don't always start off with big leads, but it's ultimately the campaigning that allows us to win states. I also think in some ways that compared to August, I wouldn't say that the quality of our campaigning dropped off, but the quantity did. We didn't have as much material, but in the end, TMTH is still a great campaigner who is very much in touch as a Kansan with the needs and wants of Kansan voters, and Kansan voters, I'm sure, know him well. So he was still, through his efforts, able to give us the win in Kansas.
All right. And then moving on to another state that the DA invested very heavily in. Of course, I have firsthand knowledge of this, North Carolina, where the Federalists, despite my own best efforts, won pretty handily, with 56% of the vote. The DA narrowly ahead of the Labor Party. So, I'm going to say, just for myself, because the question to myself is, why was it not better? And I think it's because the quality of my campaigning was not on par with my South Carolina campaign, as well as the fact that Yankee, with a long and very great record in the state of North Carolina, campaigned a good bit. And I think that made sure that the Federalists' momentum could not be stopped. I do think that investing so many resources in the state may have been a bit of a mistake compared to other races, but there's not much I can do about it now. That's really all there is to say about that one, I think. Then over in Lincoln, we had an interesting result in New York with the Federalists winning, but it was very odd because the Democratic Alliance came in fourth and the Liberals came in second. Now, I do know that there have been talks of attempted cooperation between Democratic Alliance and the Liberals, especially in some of those states in Lincoln where the Democratic Alliance won pluralities of the vote in August. So, to Ninja, do you have any insight as to if there's going to be any sort of cooperation with the Liberals in New York or any of those other states where they may do well, or is there some factor that's preventing that?
Well, we have attempted cooperation with the Liberals. New York was really a wash. It was a very close four-way election. I knew it was going to be a wash if all four parties were competing with each other. So initially, I had reached out and attempted to form a fusion ticket with the Liberals in the state of New York. I was even willing to give them the governorship of New York, but Poirot doesn't particularly seem interested in making alliances or anything like that with other parties. So I feel like it's unlikely that we'll form any sort of coalitions in these states, although the arm is always extended to the Liberal Party if they wish to work with us. I believe that we have a lot of shared policy positions and a lot of similar voting bases in a lot of ways that we could easily work together on policy issues, and if they're open to cooperating on that sort of stuff, then we're always open to them. But yeah, New York was really, no party has the control in New York other than the Federalists, who did win the very small plurality in the state, do have the executive power, but no party in the end is going to have legislative power in the state of New York.
All right. And since I'm trying to include everyone on this, I'm going to ask Tachenka again another question. That in a state that's, I would say, is pretty left-leaning, I guess, yeah, a diverse state like New York, why do you think that the Green message may not have resonated there? Because the Greens placed in dead last, actually, behind the Law and Justice Party. Why do you think that what remaining Green party there is? Why do you think that the message did not resonate with a state like New York?
I think the number one reason is that the party collapsed, so we were not able to campaign really at all. So we didn't get out the vote. The people who are diehard Green voters would have voted Green. People who, looked at all the different options on who they could vote for and decided Green was the best, sure, they voted Green, but we didn't actively try to recruit voters because the party collapsed. That's my best guess as to what happened there.
Yeah, I think that the answer is decently straightforward as far as that goes, but specifically that the Greens did end up pulling behind the Law and Justice Party, which is the party that barely has major status at all, in fact. And I don't want to say it's a joke party, but it's a joke party. So, I mean, aside from the issues as far as like party structure go, because the LJP does not have much of one in the first place, especially after HCP left. Why specifically do you think that the Greens were in last place?
It's hard to say. I don't actually know whether or not that party did any campaigning at all, but if they did even a modicum of campaigning, they probably would have expanded their voter base significantly, whereas we wouldn't at all.
They did not, for the record, campaign.
They did not. I
there
honestly
are a total
don't
of,
know.
There are a total of 3 people in that party, and I don't believe that any of them are active anymore, really, at least as far as Atlasia goes. In fact, the party's status as a major party was under threat, as one of their members was recently temp banned, if I recall. Temp banned. I don't remember who that was. Was that Sven? I think.
It might have to do with NPC algorithms, but outside of that, I'm kind of stumped. I don't know why. It's disappointing to hear in a state like New York. I don't have an answer, but I hope whoever comes in and kind of takes the Green Party's status as like a further than left left party rather. I hope they can remedy that. That shouldn't be the case in a state like New York. It's sad to hear.
Speaking about that, do you believe that there is any chance that you will come back to Atlasia anytime soon, or is that just not going to happen?
Me personally, I like the idea of Atlasia. I think it's a nice game. I don't particularly care for the state level NPC stuff. It's not a complete deal breaker for me, but I don't really care for it. But my biggest issue with Atlasia that made it frustrating as hell was it's kind of a steep learning curve. And if the Atlasia wiki was accurate as the elections happened, and there was quick references for things, who's sitting in what seat, who won this election by that percent, et cetera, et cetera. If all of the current status of the country of Atlasia, current status, was easily accessible and referenceable, I think it would have been a lot easier for somebody like me who's new to put in my own effort and like make an effort to get myself up to speed. But with the current state of Atlasia and the wiki, and it's really hard. It's really hard to figure everything out unless your party members directly help you, which mine tried to, but unsuccessfully.
The wiki being out of date, sort of like a constant issue that we're always dealing with, and it's kind of hard to deal with because updating a wiki really has to do with basically the charity of others putting in their time to updating it. I just kind of learned the hard way, and I feel like Weatherboy and Koopa also would say that they learned the hard way, and that I just dove in. I failed a lot in the early parts of my career, but eventually, I did learn how it all works. But I can see where that would be discouraging, where you try to run and you don't know what's happening and you get blown out because you don't know what's happening and you don't know where to turn. I can see why some might not consider it a very new player-friendly game.
It's also hard to form detailed strategies when you don't have all the information at your fingertips.
Yeah, that's definitely true. All right, moving on. Massachusetts had a decently close three-way race. I don't think that there's many questions to ask there as far as that goes. Once again, DA are the kingmakers.
I was a bit disappointed. I didn't expect Labor to actually pick up the governorship. I thought we might have had a shot at it because I did invest quite a bit, and the Federalists also invest quite a bit. So I was a bit surprised that Labor picked it up because I feel like the other two, big parties that were contending it put more effort into winning Massachusetts, but sometimes that happens.
I think part of the problem may have been that the Federalists and DA, the voters that both parties appeal to, I don't think that there's a lot that they both appeal to that, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that there's a good number of Labor voters that, I assume that there's enough solid Labor voters in a state like Massachusetts that with the amount of campaigning done by both the feds and DA, it made it so that neither one could actually consolidate enough voters to win the state.
Yeah, Lincoln doesn't have ranked choice voting, and previously this had come up in the council and could have been implemented for this cycle, but I had initially opposed it because I didn't want to I felt like it would be maybe too much work for Looming to handle. I didn't want to burn him out and kill the whole thing entirely, but it went very smoothly in Fremont, I think, and we got the results faster this month than we did in August. So I think that now I've sort of changed my mind, not necessarily just as a strategic thing, even though it could have strategically helped us theoretically in Massachusetts, but really just in the sense that, well, seeing how all the elections in Lincoln were pretty mixed, and the fact that it worked very well in the Fremont elections, I must say that I would support ranked choice voting now in the Lincoln elections.
All right. And speaking of decently close elections, the Virgin Islands was... Oh, gosh. Sorry, I just dropped my phone and I was reading the results from. The Virgin Islands were a decently close win for the DA, about 5%. And I know that you campaigned there a good bit, Ninja. What specific event do you think contributed most to the DA victory there?
For one that I did, probably. I did one speech. I did a pretty long speech in the Virgin Islands. I didn't do more speeches, but I did one speech in the Virgin Islands, and of course we ran some ads in the Virgin Islands. Of course, the
I had
big
been-
difference here is the fact that Albert Poirot campaigned for the Liberals, but neither the Federalists or Labor campaigned at all for the Virgin Islands.
I had been under the impression that that you had done more in the Virgin Islands.
I think maybe I was planning to, but ultimately we didn't. The election sort of crept up on us. We got a late start, so I wanted to pivot into other races like Massachusetts. But I do think that I gave a pretty good speech in the Virgin Islands, not to toot my own horn, but I did research some of the issues facing the Virgin Islands. There's some serious issues facing the Virgin Islands I touched on in my speech, such as power blackouts are far too common in the Virgin Islands. Their infrastructure has been bad, especially ever since their most important power plants were actually just pretty much just packed up and left. Their power grid's been rather unreliable. And on one of the islands, most houses aren't even connected to the running water system. It's that most of them collect rainwater and they don't have access to good plumbing, which are serious issues. It's unfortunate how the Virgin Islands got very much left behind by previous governments, but I think that voters did, in my speech, see that DA knew what the issues were, and we knew that we had to deal with them, and we were ready to deal with them. So ultimately, we did win the Virgin Islands.
All right, and that wraps up the individual results. Of course, altogether, the Federalists gained the most executive seats, with 5 governorships, followed by Labor with 3 governorships plus the Los Angeles mayoral race, and then the DA with 2. And then in terms of state legislators, Labor broke 2,000. The DA and Federalists broke 1,000. The Liberals got about 270. The Dixieland Patriots now actually have more state legislators than the Greens, after most of the Greens have switched back to other parties. So it's 22-20. And Tachenka, as former chair of the Greens, what exactly do you have to say to those that are sticking with the party right now? Those 20 state legislators.
I think it's good, especially that they're not going and leaving us to be with Labor, because, as you know, the DA has alluded to many times, including in this interview segment, Labor's gotten too big and too comfortable, and they're not really pushing the envelope. They're just kind of sitting on their power and basking in it, and that's not good for the average voter who's trying to see an improvement in their lives. Hopefully, like I said, another party comes along and picks up the Greens' mantle, and those voters, swing over to that party. But for the meantime, it's good. Labor doesn't need a bigger mandate than they already have. They don't need more governorships, more this, more that than they already have. Anything that leftist Green voters or leftist voters in general do to minimize Labor's grasp on things right now, in my eyes, is good.
All right. And then Koopa, as chair of Peace, they're next in the list with 16 state legislators, no gains. But do you think that Peace could take up that mantle, or do you think that, as far as the direction of the party is concerned, do you think that you're going to try and steer it more towards cooperation with Labor, or more towards trying to pick up a little bit of the mantle that the Greens left behind?
I mean, honestly, I'm not going to try to butt heads with the Labor Party, and I think that, this sort of left-wing infighting will only cause more hurt for the left, not less. But I will definitely say that the Peace Party will fight hard in the October NPC elections. It will fight hard and it will do anything it can to ensure peace victories all across the map. We're going to campaign hard in Texas, Kentucky, Guam, Vermont, Utah, all of those states. And we're going to, try to ensure that our party can redeem itself as a legitimate political party, that it can actually hold itself up, and that it's not just Labor's little sock puppet. I do respect Labor Party a lot. I do respect a lot of its leadership. However, Peace Party is its own individual party, and I think the October NPC elections will be a good opportunity for us to show our might and to show ourselves as a legitimate political party.
And then, of course, rounding out the list of state legislators, there is one member of the Law and Justice Party. I don't know where they're from again, but I assume that they are an interesting individual, considering the platform of the Law and Justice Party, or its full name of... Let me find the full name. I'm just joking. The name of the Law and Justice Party is absolutely massive. I'm pretty sure that it's almost the entirety of the lyrics to "We Didn't Start the Fire."
It's too big.
The slightly shortened name of the Law and Justice Party: Permanent Revolutionary Corporation, People's Social Democratic National Union, Trotsky Bidenist Buddhist Mario Path. Truly a great party. But I am going to ask: is any specific party do you think any specific party is going to try and get that one state legislator to flip over to them?
I don't think that one state legislator would ever flip over to another party.
I think, yeah, I guess that's reasonable. And as far as the next slate of elections goes, any specific plans other than, of course, what Koopa had already said? Like Ninja, do you think that there are any states that the DA specifically should target, or...
Well, of course, we're going to be targeting the nation as always, although, I mean, we haven't always targeted the nation equally, I'll admit that. But in particular, me, of course, being in Atlasia, a native of New Jersey, I will be campaigning a lot in New Jersey. And I also think that we will be campaigning more in Fremont than we used to. For the past few elections, we've pretty much been letting Labor dominate the region, and I think that we're gonna put up more of a fight next month. We're especially seeing the somewhat disappointing yet also encouraging result in the Los Angeles mayoral election. I think there is a path for the Democratic Alliance to really pick up steam in Fremont. So we're going to contest Fremont more than we used to, and we kind of didn't do as well in September as August, coming off the victory that we had in August. It was maybe a bit disappointing in September, mainly because we didn't have as much material, we didn't have as much activity. A lot of people were burnt out because of the crazy events that happened in early September with the green collapse and all that. But we're to come back out strong. We're going to campaign like hell, like we always do, and we're gonna start flipping some seats.
All right. And I think that really covers everything with the local elections. We've been on for about 45 minutes, and I don't believe that there's much else to talk about. So, unless anyone has any other closing remarks,
I'd like to quickly just make a quick closing remark. I think that Atlasia needs some reform in terms of the wiki and shared delegation of that. And I'm as a no longer Atlasian player, I'm going to put my independent vote against Labor for the upcoming presidential election. MB's a really good guy and I respect him, but I'd like to see a change.
All right. That's pretty interesting endorsement. Again, well, anti-endorsement, I guess is the best way to put that. Anti-endorsement of Labor. We'll see if that sways any voters. We'll see if the Green
Well-
voters.
Find a way to count that vote from the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm just a pundit. I'm a pundit at this point. It's just one commentator's opinion.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that everyone here could input their thoughts on this very important set of elections, and I hope that we can all get together next month for the panel on October's local elections.
And also, of course, the October federal elections are going to need a panel, aren't they?
Well, yes, of course. That will be a bit interesting, considering it will be nearing the end of the semester for me. But it shouldn't be a big issue. So if that is all, then I believe that we can say our goodbyes, and we'll see you all next time.
Take care.
Peace. Literally
Bye.
peace.